After years of waiting, Borderlands 3 is finally here, and it's more Borderlands. While I did have fun with the game during my multiple playthroughs, there was something missing. Maybe it was the technical issues or the poor antagonists, or perhaps the game took too long to release, with taste changing over the years and the franchise not having the same appeal as it did when Borderlands 2 skyrocketed the franchise. Regardless of the reason, it does serve as a great addition to this acclaimed franchise, and one that fans will truly enjoy. Borderlands 3 takes place years after the events of the previous game. Lilith now leads the Crimson Raiders, who are now under attack by a new threat. Called the Children of the Vault, they are led by the Calypso Twins, Troy and Tyreen. The twins are massively popular streamers and internet stars who've turned their internet celebrity status into a dogma, convincing their bandit followers to unite under one flag and die on their behalf. This isn't a mindless campaign of carnage. The twins are looking for vaults and have been attacking anyone who doesn't join them or is a threat. Wiping out most of the Crimson Raiders, Lilith asks the new Vault Hunters to join the ranks. This is where your story begins. As new member of the Crimson Raiders, you must help Lilith stop the twins from unlocking the vaults. Let's face it, many of us were expecting another outstanding antagonist. Handsome Jack left some massive shoes to fill, and Troy and Tyreen just fall completely flat. The overall narrative still has that Borderlands style with a mixture of over-the-top intensity, arrogant characters, and dark humor. Claptrap still voices his fictional bravado, Tannis is still very antisocial but trying to be more sensitive, and Marcus still values money above everything else. But the twins never create a meaningful or enticing connection throughout the adventure. While going into spoilers, the twins are arrogant, selfish, and spend most of their time trolling the player by publicly showing the Crimson Raiders' failures, but they never evolve past this. Now, you can argue that I'm being a Handsome Jack fanboy, and to be honest, I am, but for good reason. Throughout Borderlands 2, Jack is always shown as a strong yet deeply flawed person, and throughout the subsequent future, he's also been added to and becomes a much more appealing character, eventually leading to a breaking point that causes him to take extreme actions and leaving his cocky, ridicule persona behind during profound moments. The game does have its share of painfully obvious, predictable moments towards the end of the game, but it also comes with some shocking moments. I did like this approach, as it meant that just being an important character didn't mean you were safe. The humor and writing has been the target for a lot of criticism since launching. Many explain that it's dated and some arguing that it's insulting, but it fits the tone and the universe of the game, as this type of writing has been present in every Borderlands since launch. The arrogant use of dark actions for comedic effect and killing characters without care has always been part of the Borderlands franchise. It's what Borderlands has always done, and I didn't expect any different from the narrative, so it didn't really annoy me. Much of Borderlands 3's gameplay improvement stems from building on existing mechanics. The biggest changes come to the Vault Hunter classes. Unlike previous games, you can now create subclasses within your builds and swap these changes at any time. This means when you're playing cooperatively, which features up to 4 players, you can have the same Vault Hunter with different abilities. The Vault Hunters are great, each is unique. You have Amara the Siren, the mech pilot and gunner Mose, Zane, who uses a hologram to deceive enemies, and Flak, who can summon ally animals to fight alongside him. Each character has unique dialogue linked to the story, but the response from the NPCs is the same regardless. They each have unique cosmetics, and players can share equipment among each of their characters through the storage system. Best of all, if you complete the game and start with a different character, Guardian ranks, which are tokens to boost a variety of stats, carry over to make the journey a bit more easier. As always, the major focus of Borderlands 3 is the loot, and there's plenty of it. Guns and other upgrades are constantly being provided. Many of the guns provide unique bonuses and different types of ammo, encouraging you to keep certain weapons on hand. It can be difficult at first keeping all these guns on hand since the game has a poor inventory system in the beginning of the game. You can upgrade space for more ammo and inventory slots later on, but the starting inventory is just very poor. Borderlands 3 takes exploration into space. Instead of having the player isolated to only one planet, specifically Pandora, you can now travel to different planets. Unfortunately, the planets rarely feel distinct. They have different looks, but mostly house the same enemies. Players who've experienced past Borderlands titles will notice that the environments just don't have that distinct look that makes them seem like you're on another planet. Some areas are obviously better than others. There is this one area that houses a giant boss, but once it's killed, it's literally just a giant area of nothing. You literally just drive through mountains of sand to get from one point to the other in order to look for hidden collectibles. Most of the areas are well designed, with lots of hidden areas to uncover and side missions to take part in. You have your fetch quests, kill targets, collect items, and occasional crazy person who wants you to do something unique done. It all fits into the insanity of the Borderlands franchise, and due to the sheer number of quests, it's going to take you a while to finish everything. Not every quest is excellent as expected, but most have you exploring areas that you would mostly ignore, which can expose new quests in areas. There are collectibles in the way of echo logs from the first Vault Hunter and ancient information about those who created the vaults, but the latter is only accessible towards the end of the game, which can be vexing, but it does expand on the overall lore of Borderlands. But of course, you'll be fighting a ton of enemies along the way. Borderlands 3 has a strong variety of soldiers, indigenous life forms, and tougher options of all these enemies. Most enemies repeat themselves, but they constantly remain a threat, with newer, tougher versions of the enemies being used later on in the game that have increased health, damage, and armor. Bosses are numerous and challenging. However, despite them coming in mostly unique types, they are heavy bullet sponges. Some bosses can take over 10 minutes to kill because of their insane health, but you can't take advantage of certain weaknesses to whittle down their time if you need to defeat the enemies quickly. Nevertheless, solo players may have troubles with these fights with certain Vault Hunters. Amara, for example, can recover health and can revive herself one time during combat if she's built the right way, whereas Moze can deal heavy damage but lacks the same recovery and defenses. You can farm bosses for more experience and better gear, which is great, but given the time needed to defeat some of these enemies, sometimes it's not worth it unless you are insanely geared. If you do happen to play with an NPC, they can revive you, which is a nice addition. Leveling is mostly traditional. You earn experience by defeating enemies and completing quests to gain new skill points until you hit level 50. Getting to level 50 is a bit easier this time around because of the massive amount of quests and areas to explore. Once you complete the game, you gain access to Guardian Regs, which boost your individual skills like luck, reloading, damage taken, and more. Guardian Regs carry over to new playthroughs and new characters, making additional runs much easier. In addition, the endgame gives you access to a new game plus mode called True Vault Hunter mode, where enemies scale to you and provide much more powerful items in return. And if you want to continue the same save file, you can access something called Mayhem mode, which allows you to continue playing on the same file, but with harder enemies. You can't play the entire game alone or cooperatively with up to 3 friends or strangers. It's fun, easy to access, and playing this way makes enemies more challenging. It does make exploration much easier having friends along, especially with fetch quests. Personally, I like to play the game alone, but the option is there, and for the most part, I never had an issue connecting to other players. The cel-shaded graphics are hard to improve on. They tend to withstand the test of time and have become an iconic look for Borderlands. The characters all look amazing, some have changed their outfit, but most look the same. The enemies, specifically the bandits, come in more variation, which is more welcoming. There are more details in the overall environment, and the cutscenes are well choreographed, especially with that Borderlands introduction transition that highlights the character's name and small description. The interactions between characters outside the cutscenes are a bit stale. Lip syncing is a bit off, and the character models have very little facial expression. This isn't a big deal, but it's kinda hard to not notice. The soundtrack, on the other hand, is stellar. I personally love the new main menu theme and the combat music used. Nothing does compare to Borderlands 2's Damn Top track, but it has a lot of scores that definitely add more variety compared to previous games. Instead of just being a bunch of loud and adrenaline-filled musical scores to get the player ready for the next firefight, some provide a more common feeling. I played Borderlands 3 on the Xbox One X, so I can only speak about the issues I experienced during this version of the game. There were small bugs like NPCs acting strange and the occasional broken quest that required me to restart the game, but the most predominant issue was the interface. Accessing the main interface would slow the game down to a noticeable degree. This seems like a minor issue, but in a game where you'll be accessing the menu constantly to change items, look at the map, or check side missions, this minor issue became a huge annoyance. I hate to say this phrase since it's been overused to describe Borderlands 3, but Borderlands 3 is more Borderlands. It follows the same pattern of the previous games with a lot of loot to collect and enemies to kill. The Calypso Twins are just annoying internet celebrities that never go beyond their original personas, which is disappointing. However, the core principles are still here. Training your Vault Hunter to become stronger is still entertaining, and playing with friends is just as fun. Borderlands 3 doesn't push the series to the same heights as Borderlands 2 did, but that's okay. Borderlands 3 still delivers a dance adventure full of memorable moments and something that fans will truly enjoy. If you've never got into the Borderlands franchise, it's unlikely that this game will change your mind, but if you've been a fan of the series since the beginning, this game will give you exactly what you've loved about the franchise since the beginning.